They read my rank aloud. Twice. I think Counselor Sethari believed it would embarrass me. Terran Commercial Registry, Class 4 Audit Clerk, he said, the Varath common tongue flattening my title into something that sounded faintly ridiculous even in translation. We note for the record that the Terran Interstellar Authority has sent us a cargo auditor. There were soft sounds from the upper tiers. Not quite laughter. The Varath don't laugh the way we do, they exhale in short controlled bursts through their secondary breathing slits, a social reflex that signals contempt rather than amusement. I counted 11 of them doing it at once. The light inside the Synod Hall was amber gold, the same tone they use for routine administrative sessions, the color that says nothing important is happening here. I sat down at the respondent's table and folded my hands on the surface in front of me. The table was brushed steel, cold. The Synod Hall was a long rectangular chamber, low-ceilinged compared to what I'd seen in other bodies, its walls lined with tiered seating that curved inward at the far end. No dome, no view of the stars, just amber panels and the faces of 17 Varath commercial administrators looking down at me with the patient disregard you'd give a parcel that had arrived at the wrong address. Sethari was at the presiding position, elevated on a half-circle dais, his long pale fingers resting on either side of the session reader. He had the build of most senior Varath bureaucrats, tall, angular, the membrane around his eyes slightly thickened with age, giving him a permanently calculating expression. He'd been presiding over this body for 31 standard years. He hadn't seen a challenge to a session decision in 19. The purpose of this session, he said, settling back into his chair, is the formal revocation of Terran commercial operating licenses across all 17 interarm transit corridors, pursuant to the Varath Commercial Code, subsection 41, the non-compliance clause. Additionally, the reclassification of all Terran-flagged commercial vessels as unregistered salvage, effective upon the session seal. He paused. We do, as a procedural courtesy, invite the respondent to offer any statement. The way he said it, that last sentence was the amber light of the whole session. A courtesy, a formality extended to cargo auditors in the same spirit one hands a service citation to a docking attendant. The gesture that confirms the outcome was never in question. I said nothing. Sethari waited 3 seconds and then began the procedural walk. One by one, the 17 members of the Synod confirmed their support for the motion. Each confirmation was brief, clipped the Varath equivalent of a signature. The session reader tallied them in silence. 12, 14, 17. The vote was unanimous and the session reader chimed once, a low tone like a bell struck underwater. The motion carries, Sethari said. He reached for the session seal. Counselor. My voice was even, not loud. Sethari stopped. He looked at me with the specific expression the Varath use when something small has made an unexpected sound. The session is concluded, Auditor. Your response, period. I have one question. I reached into the case at my feet and removed a single printed document. I set it on the presentation rail at the edge of the table, face up, and slid it forward 2 inches. I didn't stand. Which member of this body will authorize the first transit permit after the revocation takes effect? Sethari's membrane flickered. The expression around his eyes shifted. Transit permits are processed through the Varath Licensing Bureau. The Bureau will continue to function regardless of. Through the Terran Registry backbone, I said. Specifically through the clearance protocol established under the Commercial Accord of Varath Year 1104, which designated the Terran Registry as the primary processing node for all interarm transit authorizations under 200 metric class cargo units. I nodded toward the document on the rail. That accord is the one the Synod ratified. The Bureau processes the requests. The backbone validates them. The license you just revoked is the license that keeps the backbone running. The amber light didn't change. The room did. It started with the delegate nearest the door on the left tier, a younger administrator whose name I hadn't caught from the session introduction. He pulled his reader from his forearm console and began checking something. His colleague next to him leaned in. Within 40 seconds, 5 members of the upper tier were consulting their own records, their movements quick and tight in the way the Verath move when something is wrong that they haven't yet confirmed is wrong. Sethari had not moved. I gave the room another 10 seconds. The delegate from the third tier, older than the others, with the gray membrane ridge that indicated senior tenure, had gone very still. He was not checking his reader. He was looking at me in the way experienced administrators look at a variable they failed to account for. His expression was not outrage. It was the particular coldness of a professional realizing quietly that the calculation was wrong at the foundation. The backbone, Sethari said slowly, is a Verath infrastructure system. The backbone runs on Terran Registry Protocol 7-11. It was integrated in Verath year 1107, when the original Verath transit processing system was retired after the corridor expansion doubled volume beyond its capacity. The Terran Registry took over the validation function. It's documented in the session record of the Technical Standards Committee, Verath year 1107, 43rd session. I paused. I audited those records 6 months ago. That's what cargo auditors do. The delegate from the left tier said something in clipped Verath to the colleague beside him. Not whispered. The hall was quiet enough that it carried. A question about the transit certification queue, about what happened to pending authorizations if the validation node went offline. The answer came back in the same register, clipped, unhappy. Sethari was looking at the document on the rail now, looking at it the way a senior administrator looks at something that has just rearranged the room without asking permission. If the Terran operating license is revoked, I said, the registry goes dormant under Protocol 7-11's emergency suspension clause. 14 hours after dormancy, all pending transit authorizations in the interarm queue are suspended pending revalidation. There are currently 947 authorizations in that queue. I let that sit for 2 seconds. The Synod's own supply contracts hold approximately 200 of them. The sound from the upper tiers had changed completely. No controlled exhales through secondary slits. No contempt. Something much quieter and less certain. This could have been raised, Sethari said, and I could hear the effort it cost him to keep his voice level during the consultation period. There was no consultation period. The session was filed as a summary revocation under the noncompliance clause which waives the standard review window. I met his eyes. I raised it now. He stared at me across the length of the chamber. 17 years of watching things go his way in that hall in that amber light, and the expression he was wearing didn't have a category for what had just happened. Not anger, not calculation, something slower. The session reader was still open. The seal had not been pressed. 3 of the upper-tier delegates had moved to a shared console at the back of the curved wall. One of them pulled up what I recognized from the screen angle as the current transit queue. He stood there for a long moment. Then he turned and said something to Sethari in rapid formal Verath that I caught most of. He was suggesting they table the session. Sethari straightened in his chair. He pressed his fingertips together in the Verath administrative pause gesture, the one that means the presiding authority is recalibrating, not concluding. The session, he said carefully, is not concluded. It is suspended, pending a technical review of the integration documentation. He looked down at me. We asked the respondent to remain available. I picked up my case. I left the document on the rail. I'm not going anywhere, I said. That was all. They rescinded the revocation motion 22 days later, quietly, in a procedural notice that described the original filing as premature pending technical resolution. No session, no amber light, no one reading my rank aloud for the benefit of the upper tiers. I received a standard administrative communication from the Synod Bureau 2 days after that. It was a request to review the integration documentation and confirm the current state of the backbone licensing structure. They called it a courtesy consultation. I called it a Tuesday. Some rooms need to hear a name called out like it doesn't matter before they'll understand what the name was actually doing there. The Verath Commercial Licensing Synod learned that lesson in amber light, in front of 17 witnesses, in the space between a question asked and a seal not pressed. I was the last person they dismissed as a cargo auditor. I don't think they remember dismissing me. I think they remember the silence that came after.